I came back from deployment expecting peace, and instead found flashing police lights at my gate. My house, the place I'd worked my whole life for, wasn't mine anymore. A neighbor from my HOA had moved in 3 weeks before I even returned, and she told the cops I was the intruder. Act 1. The conflict begins. When you serve overseas, you dream about home. That moment when you finally pull into your driveway, see your own front door, breathe that air that feels safe. That's what kept me going during endless nights in the desert. But when I turned into my neighborhood that day, the glow of red and blue lights washed over the marble of my driveway. My heart sank before I even opened the door of my SUV. 2 officers were already waiting, clipboard in hand, stern faces. One of them stepped up. "Sir, we need to verify your identity before you enter this property." I froze. My identity. My house, my property. I pulled out my driver's license, my military ID. "I'm David Jackson. I live here." The officer didn't nod, didn't wave me through. He radioed dispatch like I was some criminal, and then he dropped the name that still makes my blood boil. We had a call from Cynthia Reynolds. I glanced over. There she was, middle-aged, arms crossed, chin high, and a shiny HOA badge pinned to her blouse like it gave her real authority. She had that look like she was the law, the judge, and the jury. Before I could ask what this was about, she strutted forward. "I've been living here for 3 weeks," she announced loud enough for the neighbors who had gathered on the sidewalk. This house was empty, and I moved in to keep the neighborhood safe. I thought I misheard her. "You've been living in my house." She nodded like she was doing me a favor. The Homeowners Association approved it. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe she was serious. "You're trespassing. The HOA doesn't get to decide who lives in my home." But she doubled down, pointing at me like I was the intruder. "We can't just leave properties vacant. Crime is up. I stepped up when you weren't here." The officers exchanged glances. They weren't sure what to do. Meanwhile, neighbors whispered some nodding in support of her, others staring at me like they'd never seen me before. Inside my own home, the smell hit me first. Cooking wine flowers on the table. Family photos had been replaced by pictures of neighborhood watch meetings. On the counter, my mail had been opened and sorted. She'd made herself at home. I looked around, my stomach tight. "This is my house. You had no right." She just smirked. Someone had to protect the community. Act 2. Escalation and the turning point. That night, I walked through every room with the officers documenting everything. My laptop had been used. A sticky note on the fridge read, "Neighbors feel safer knowing someone is home." I can't describe the mix of anger and shame that rushed through me. I'd faced combat zones with a straight back, but here I was feeling powerless inside my own home. And I'll be honest, there was a moment when I doubted myself. I sat on the edge of my bed, the sheets not even mine anymore, and wondered maybe she wasn't completely wrong. Maybe I should have arranged something before leaving. Maybe she really thought she was helping. But then I caught sight of the empty space where my dad's old photograph had hung a photo of him in uniform. She'd taken it down and replaced it with some community calendar. That was it. My doubt burned away. This wasn't protection. This was possession. The next morning, I walked straight into the HOA office with the police report in my hand. "Did you authorize Cynthia Reynolds to move into my property?" The board members looked uncomfortable. One of them stammered, "No, Mr. Jackson, of course not. That's against our bylaws. She acted on her own." "Then why hasn't she been stopped?" I snapped. Their silence said it all. They didn't want to touch her. She was one of those HOA warriors, loud, relentless, and willing to bulldoze anyone to get her way. That night, the HOA called an emergency meeting at the community center. I showed up early, still in my jacket from court filing papers with my lawyer. When they handed me the microphone, I didn't waste a second. What happened to me wasn't protection, it was trespassing. Cynthia broke into my home, lived in it, changed it, and claimed the HOA gave her permission. You know that's a lie. This isn't about safety, it's about control. Murmurs filled the room. Some neighbors nodded in agreement. Others looked away, clearly uncomfortable. And then Cynthia stood up, voice shrill but confident. "I moved in because no one else would. The neighborhood was vulnerable. I protected us when he was gone. If that makes me a vigilante, then fine. Applause broke out from her side of the room. My stomach twisted. How could anyone clap for that? But then a man I barely knew, Mr. Hall from across the street, stood up. She's been doing this for years, harassing people over paint colors, threatening fines, locking people out of the pool. This isn't about safety. This is about control, and David isn't the first target. That moment flipped the energy in the room. Others started sharing stories. Whispers became open accusations. Cynthia's face hardened, but for the first time she didn't look untouchable. That was the turning point. I wasn't alone anymore. Act 3. The climax and justice. It all came down to court. My lawyer laid it out: clean photographs of my altered home, testimonies from neighbors, HOA statements denying they ever authorized Cynthia. I watched Cynthia on the stand, her hands gripping the edge like she could hold on to control a little longer. "I did this for the community," she said, her voice quivering but still proud. "My intentions were pure. If you punish me for protecting my neighbors, then justice is blind." The judge leaned forward. "This isn't about your intentions. It's about the law. And the law does not give you the right to occupy someone else's property." You could feel the air shift. For once, her HOA badge, her defiance, her endless speeches, it all meant nothing. When the gavel came down declaring her guilty of trespassing and unlawful occupation, she didn't look at me. She gathered her papers, lips tight, and walked out of that courtroom like a queen forced off her throne. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just stood there, breathing in the silence, reclaiming the space she had stolen. My house, my name, my dignity, it was all mine again. A final line lesson. Protecting a community should never mean trampling over someone else's rights, because once you cross that line, you're not protecting anymore, you're just taking.